I have a question to start us off. There's a shocker, yeah? You ever feel like you've blown it? Is it going to be one of those today? Have you ever feel like you've blown it, so much so that you feel like you've knocked yourself out of the game?
Yes.
So I was born in San Francisco, 1963. I'm way back from the 1900s, you young people, right? My biological parents were teenagers. They didn't keep me. I was put up for adoption in the Children's Hospital in Oakland, California. I was an orphan for the first 4 months of my life, but God saw me. And He had a plan, and I was adopted into a good Christian home. Should have been amazing after that. I was set up for success, right? When I was little, my mom would sit with me and I would memorize scripture on 3x5 cards. Oh yeah. And I loved to win all the games at church and winning all the Bible quizzes and everything, and loved going to all the neighbors, telling them about Jesus. I would just go up and down the street in our neighborhood telling people about Jesus. I was always bugging somebody. I remember I would go to sleep at night and I would think how I was going to help, people the next day, and I was going to do this and I was going to do that. But when I got to be a teenager, I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I checked out and became a hardcore drug addict for 16 years. I took myself out of the game. I hurt a lot of people. I hurt my mom, who spent countless hours teaching me Bible. I hurt my dad, who spent countless hours with me fishing or hiking, because my mom would say, Les, that was my dad's name, Les. She'd say, Timmy's bouncing off the walls again. You got to get him out of the house, right? And we'd go fishing or hiking or snake hunting or something like that. But I hurt my family as an adult. The older I got, the worse things got, and the more people I hurt. Age 32, I put myself in rehab for a year. That was, 1995. So back to my question. You ever feel like you've blown it? So much so that you feel like you've knocked yourself out of the game? Because if so, I totally get it. I remember when I was in rehab dealing with the reality of who I'd become over the last 16 years. I would cry every day because of the awful things I had done. I cried every single day in rehab for the first 6 months. I cried often for the first 9, but every day for the first 6 months. And I remember thinking, I'm not sure how much longer I can bear the weight of this guilt. Would things ever get any better? How could I possibly face these people again? What was I supposed to say to all the people that I hurt? And as I worked through the path of recovery, giving my life to Jesus so He could sort things out, then coming to a place where I truly wanted to change and was willing to put in the hard work, it's kind of a theme today, put in the hard work to get there, I learned about making amends. Making amends meant taking the initiative. It was about going to these people, owning what I did, saying I'm sorry, asking for forgiveness, and doing whatever I could to set things straight. First, I go to my mom. She said, God told me at age 40 to adopt a child. You were it. We found you. God has a plan for your life. I still love you, and that has not changed. Wow. Went to my dad, went to my brother, went to both of my sisters, went to their spouses, conversation after conversation, apology after apology. And as I worked through my list of people that I had harmed, I started to remember all the people I had mistreated and cheated when I had my own little handyman business in Northern California, because the list of people on my list was So this handyman business I had in California, I was terrible at, by the way, being a handyman. That's why I have you guys do the cool stuff around here that needs to get done, because I'm just terrible at it. But I knew I needed to go and take responsibility with these people too. I knew it deep in my soul. I'm like, man, this seems so far out of reach. I mean, what was I going to say? What are they going to do when they answer the door and see me standing there a couple years later, just randomly? One lady, she was a customer. I was hired to resurface her driveway, right, to put that black coating on it and fill in the cracks, right? She gave me the money up front. I never finished the job. I disappeared. So here I am. It's a couple years later. I've gone through rehab. I'm like needing to make amends now. I park in front of the house. My heart's in my throat. I'm fumbling up to the door. I knock on the door. She opens it. And before she had time to say anything, I just kind of blurred out that I'm so sorry. And I just kind of fumbled over myself. And I was saying this and I was saying that. And she's just kind of staring at me. And she's like, it's good to see you. You know, I've often wondered about you. Well, somehow I was able to get my footing and make an apology that made sense. I told her about rehab. I told her about getting my life together and that I knew I needed to come here and take responsibility for this. And she cried and she said, thank you so much for coming. I cannot tell you how shocked I was, how right it felt to make things right. It was super hard, but it was the super right thing to do, right? I get done. I get back into my car. I'm choking down my emotions. I'm like, man, recovery is so hard. I'm like, I'm such an idiot. How in the world did I get myself into this place? Just to be so derailed in life for so long. I mean, the pain of coming back out of the ditch that I was in was brutal. But without it, I wouldn't be standing here today. God doesn't waste our pain. He recycles it for the good of somebody else. So I'm down. So I'm outside. I'm getting in the car. I'm trying to compose myself. And I'm like, down on my list, okay, down the street, there's the next guy. And I have to do this again. And then down the street, there's the next guy. And down the street, dude, it was going to be a long day. It came to be like a long number of weeks. Back to my question, you ever feel like you've blown it? So much so that you feel like you've knocked yourself out of the game. I totally get it. And I'm here to tell you, God's not done with you if you find yourself in this camp. Might you need to do some hard work making things right? Probably. Might you need to work through some guilt if there's some stuff you know you need to take care of with somebody? Probably. But there are wonderful things on the other side of such pain and difficulty. And that's real. Kind of like all the wonderful stories we've been talking about since since all the stories that have been happening after the resurrection, which is what we've been doing for a number of weeks now, right? We've seen the pain and difficulty of the crucifixion that gave way to the resurrection, and then all these wonderful things start happening. People amazed that Jesus rose from the dead in the first place. Jesus helping people to see the truth about it all. Folks having their doubts overturned and turned into faith. Let's take a break from my story here, and I want to show you another story that takes place on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. But it has kind of the same flavor to it. All right? Lots of cool things to see in this passage. Let's see what's up. Jesus has risen from the dead. He has seen the disciples a couple times. Remember, he walked in through locked doors, said, peace be with you, right? Well, he tells them, hey, we need to meet up in Galilee, right? So here we go, John chapter 21. Later, Jesus appeared again to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. This is how it happened. Can you bring me down half a click? I have a ring in my ear. Several of the disciples were there. Simon Peter, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples. Simon Peter said, I'm going fishing. We'll come too, they all said. So they went out in the boat, but they caught nothing all night. They caught nothing. These guys are fishermen. This is who they are. This is what they've always known. This is how they make their money. This is how they provide for their families. This is what they've been trained to do. It's who they are. They're fishermen. But now it's after the resurrection. And what they don't understand yet is they're fishing for the wrong thing. And because they're fishing for the wrong thing, they have caught no thing. Nothing all night. Follow me on this, right? Let's go back 3 years. The disciples, they're minding their own business, their fishing business. Jesus sees them. He knows them. He knows who they're gonna become. He has a plan for their life, and he says this, Matthew chapter 4. He's walking along the shores. It's 3 years earlier, and he says, "Come, follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people." Well, one by one, they jump up. They leave their nets, they follow him. They went on a ride of a lifetime. I mean, they walked the countryside with Jesus. They see crazy miracles and heard him say things that they've never heard before. He's flipping things upside down. He's saying things like, the first will be last, the meek will inherit the earth. In order to live, you've got to die. And they were constantly hearing things and seeing things that were otherworldly. I mean, the last 3 years have been a whirlwind of adventure, sometimes joyful, sometimes scary, but every bit of it was awe-inspiring. Every moment, awe-inspiring. Whoa, we're in a whole completely different place in life now. Wow. The thought of being the first group of guys chosen by the Messiah, right? His group of leaders. The nation of Israel was waiting hundreds of years for this to happen. Now all of a sudden, wow, it's happening with us. Whoa. Man, the future looks bright. Never need to look back. Then all of a sudden, everything comes to a screeching halt, right? Kind of like when you're a kid and it's the end of summer. Right? And you've been doing amazing things all summer, and all of a sudden you wake up and it's like, you got to go back to school. Right? I remember these summers. When I was a kid, we had 3 full months when I was a kid. June, July, and August. I mean, it was after Memorial Day, and you were just out doing whatever you want until after Labor Day. Then you went to school, right? Oh my gosh, wow, doing whatever you want. Life is amazing, just one big adventure after the other, playing with friends, dreaming about this or that. Ooh, and then the ice cream man would drive up every day. The Messiah has come. And I'd always get the chocolate malt. You pull the top off and then the little wooden spoon. Oh, yeah. Right? I know there's some of you who have to remember what I'm talking about. Dude, it was like the thing. And then, yeah, whatever, back to school. This is what's going on with the disciples right here. This is what's going on. Especially for Peter. Peter is the guy I want to hone in on here. Because he says, I'm going fishing. I'm going back to work, is what he's saying. And the other guys say, yeah, okay, we'll come with you. What is going on here? It's after the resurrection. They're not supposed to be fishing for fish anymore. They have forgotten. Jesus knows exactly what's going on here, especially for Peter. Because think about this. Imagine the turmoil that Peter's in right here. I'm out. I'm going fishing. This isn't like a nice hobby. I'm going fishing with the guys on Saturday morning fishing. This is, I'm out. I'm going back to work. Peter is not in a good space. Why? Well, it wasn't too long ago that Peter was all in. He's following Jesus. He's even kind of cocky, right? Kind of the leader of the group. He even jumps out of a boat, walks on water. And when Jesus said someone was going to betray him, Peter was like, not me. I ain't doing that. I will never betray you. I'm in it till the end. Even if all these guys over here will, I never will. And Jesus looks at him at that time, and he says, I've always appreciated your passion, Peter. That's why I chose you. And we're going to need that passion again soon. But before the rooster crows in the morning, you will have denied me 3 times. He's like, no way. He's like, oh yeah. You're going to turn your back on me 3 times before the sun comes up. And Peter's like, not me, man. They might do it. I'm not going to do it. I'll never hurt you. That'll never happen. But it did happen. And when it happened, the text said he wept bitterly. Absolute defeat. His stomach's in knots. Overwhelming sadness of what have I just done? What have I just done? And you can't go back. I mean, it's too late. Have you ever been in that spot where you say something and you're like, oh, you can't go back. That's awful. Imagine the turmoil now, the guilt, knowing he has to face Jesus. I mean, think about it, right? He was there behind the locked doors when Jesus showed up a couple of weeks ago. Jesus says, hey, I want you guys to meet me in Galilee. We have some business to take care of, and I'm going to go on ahead of you, and you guys are going to meet me there. So imagine Peter, right, this whole time, day after day, the knots in his tummy, right? Thinking, what am I going to do? How can I possibly face him? I mean, he's back. I mean, like, he's really back. And we're going to have to talk. I'm so embarrassed. I was so cocky. I put down my friends saying, well, they might betray him, but not me. I never will. I mean, I'm better than everybody else. I'll never quit. I'll never hurt you, Jesus. And he's like, now look at what I've done. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? He's tripping. It's one thing to hurt someone, but then never see them again. It's a whole different thing to have to stand face to face. Dude. Oh. And own what you've done. Kind of like driving up and knocking on someone's door that you know you ripped off and you hurt them. You don't have to go back, but inside here, you know you have to go back. And you wonder, I mean, is it really going to be okay? Am I really going to get a second chance? So, you ever feel like you've blown it? So much so that you feel like you've knocked yourself out of the game? I totally get it. So does Peter. Peter totally gets this. Right? So he says, yeah, I'm out. Going fishing. Go back to what I know. The adventure's over for me. Aren't you glad you came today? It's kind of a downer so far, huh? So here they are. They're fishing, not catching, just fishing. And this happens. Verse 4. At dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. He called out, fellows, have you caught any fish? No, they replied. Then he said, throw out your net on the right side of the boat, and you'll get some. So they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. Then the disciple Jesus loved, this is probably John, said to Peter, it's the Lord. When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, jumped into the water, and headed to shore. Could it be like, Peter's like, wait, I remember this. This is how it all started. We weren't catching anything 3 years ago either. Jesus shows up, he says, try again, and that's when the miracles started happening. That's when the great adventure started happening. And could it be that he's like so overwhelmed with emotion, wanting things to be made right, wanting things to be okay again, that this was his way of blurting out, kind of like I did when I'm standing at the door, just I'm so sorry. Jesus, I'm so sorry. I was so cocky. I'm such a fool. I never wanted to hurt you. And he's splashing through the water, right? He's running up onto the beach, kind of like me, fumbling up to the door. He's just wishing he could go back to that moment before he blew it. And he's fumbling and he's stumbling and he's stammering. There's so much in this passage right here, but I want to stay right here locked in with Peter. So I'm going to jump to verse 15. It says this, they have breakfast. Jesus sits down with Peter and decides to have a conversation. After breakfast, Jesus asks Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," Peter replied. "You know I love you." "Then feed my lambs," Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know I love you." "Then take care of my sheep," Jesus said. A third time he asked him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Then feed my sheep." What's going on here? Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And Jesus is giving Peter an incredible moment here to make amends 3 times. Heal his soul, to start again, turn it around, get recentered. This is a gift. This is a gift. Now, we don't usually see moments like this as a gift. We would prefer to avoid moments like this, moments of extreme discomfort, where we have to see and kind of be in our own sin. But if we would see these moments from Jesus' perspective, we would see them as a gift, and we would see them as an opportunity. I remember God did this for me. He did this for me, not to me. This was a gift. He gave me so many opportunities to make amends for the rotten things that I had done. When I was in rehab, we had to make a list of all the people we had harmed. We had to write down all the things we did to them. We had to own it. We had to make it real so we could see the truth and feel the pain so we could make better decisions moving forward. And Jesus is letting Peter feel the pain. It's a gift. He's letting Peter feel the pain, to work it through, to make it real, but to ultimately make it better. Because he says, okay, now feed my sheep. In other words, plan hasn't changed. You're still my guy. Let's get back in the game. It's time to go fishing for people. We need to make the shift. So, you ever feel like you've blown it? So much so that you feel like you've knocked yourself out of the game? I would say you might be on the bench, but you're not out of the game. You're not out of the game because God has a plan. Let's pull in another passage that's going to help us see this. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 12. I love this. But God's discipline is always good for us, so that we might share in his holiness. No discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. It's painful. But afterward, there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. So, take a new grip with your tired hands and strengthen your weak knees. Mark out a straight path for your feet so that those who are weak and lame will not fall, but become strong. Love this. This is the story of Peter. Nice and simple. 3 things I want us to see in this story. Number 1 is this. The hard work of making amends is painful. Has anybody else dealt with this? You don't have to stand up and preach, but does anybody else relate?
Yes.
Yeah. Painful. First 6 months of rehab, I cried every day. Painful. Making a list of all the people I had harmed and writing out all the things I did that hurt them, painful. Working through the fear of actually going to them and having a conversation, brutal. All right? Verse 11, no discipline is enjoyable while it is happening. It's painful. Peter, he put 3 years into following Jesus, totally excited about the future, and he totally blows it. Now he has to own it, and it's painful. But here's something I want us to see right here. Jesus picked him personally. Jesus picked him on purpose. From eternity past. Picked him personally. Knowing this was going to happen. Jesus has picked each and every one of us personally. On purpose. Knowing that we're going to blow it. And so if you've blown it, Jesus already knew it, and he picked you anyway. That's powerful right there. Jesus picked me too, as an orphan. He put me in a good Christian home. I had everything going for me. I blew it. He knew everything that was going to happen. He knew all the hurt that I was going to cause, and he picked me anyway. That's crazy. It's the same with you. He picked you on purpose for his purpose. He has a plan. And maybe you're saying, you know what, this message really isn't for me today, and I'm really good that you're in a good space, because maybe that's the case for you. But maybe there's someone in here right now that needs to know you're not out of the game if you have some hard work to do. But let me inch my toes over the boundary line a little bit to say, if this is you and you know you have some work to do, do it. Do it. Jump out of the boat, splash up the beach, fumble up to the door, and figure it out. And do it. And if you need to have a conversation first, we can do that. I talk to a lot of people before actually going and making amends to just think things through. And what should I say? What should I not say? How should I present myself? All that kind of stuff. If you need to do that, let's do that. Number one, the hard work of making amends is painful. Second thing I see, though, is this. The hard work of making amends brings peace. Verse 11. No discipline is enjoyable while it is happening. It's painful. But afterward, there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. Imagine the weight that's being lifted off of Peter's shoulders, right, as he's being reinstated by Jesus, when he's being put back in the game. I remember I was in rehab. This is crazy. I'm getting put back into the game. I was literally in a rehab in Emeryville, California, which is right across the bay, right across the water from San Francisco. Right, so every time I went outside, I would see San Francisco right there, right across the shore. Every day, I was reminded that God loved me, that he saw me, that he rescued me from where I was as an orphan with no parents, and he saw all this stuff that was coming, and he told me, it's not over for you. We're going to work this thing through, you're going to get well, and it's going to be okay. That was hard to swallow at first because the guilt is just so heavy. You have a hard time accepting that. But God is faithful and he works you through it. I remember getting back into relationship with my mom and my family, and we worked together at the church, and I did a recovery ministry. Wendy did it with me, and we were helping people come out of recovery and helping people work through the 12 steps and helping people work through their own making amends and bringing people to Jesus. And my mom was an amazing Bible study leader, amazing discipler, and so these people would come in off the streets, and they would come in, and we would do recovery with them, and I would funnel them over to my mom's class, and she had like 70 people that had just come to Jesus, and we're doing this thing at them. What a cool thing that God did. It's not over. It's just not over. It's so cool. As I did the hard work of recovery and making amends, I found peace. It doesn't come any other way. I found a well-being that I didn't even know existed within the human experience. That literally blew me away. I remember when I went into recovery, I was really in the tank, but it was like 2 or 3 weeks in that I started to laugh in such a way that it came from my belly, and I was completely surprised that, what is that? What is that laugh? It just feels so real and good and all that. It was a real laugh, a sober, clean, not drugged up laugh. I said, and I remember I said to myself in that moment when I was noticing, like, what is this? I'm like, you know what? I've been partying my whole life. Ha, 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 ha. Partying, but never had joy. And in that moment, my eyes were open, and I'm like, wow. It just absolutely blew me away. When I finally took responsibility for all the harm that I had caused, I found a peace that surpassed all understanding, and it was amazing. So what Peter is learning here in this conversation with Jesus is that making amends is painful. Making amends brings peace, and then this one, last one. The hard work of making amends makes you ready for service. It makes you ready for service. This is kind of the training grounds for a lot of us who are going to make a difference on planet Earth. This is how you get there. Verse 12 and 13, let's look at it again. So take a new grip with your tired hands and strengthen your weak knees. Mark out a straight path for your feet so that those who are weak and lame will not fall, but become strong. This is about leadership. Get a grip. Set your course so that those who will need direction will have a leader they can trust because you've been through the ringer, right? You work through your pain, you find peace for your soul, and you step up to serve and give your life away to other people. That's how it works. What Peter is learning is that getting knocked down a peg and being humbled actually gets you ready for the next level of life and service. There's an old saying that says, all great leaders walk with a limp. Why? Because they've been knocked down a couple times. Sometimes it's because they've been hurt by someone else and they needed to rise above it. And they did. Sometimes it's because they needed to have their pride put in check and then they've needed to take responsibility for their own wrongdoing, and that's super painful. But the folks who can humble themselves and take responsibility for the harm that they have caused others and make amends are able to lead others with a wisdom and a grace and a humility that is sorely needed in today's world. We don't need more cocky, prideful, know-it-all leaders. We need folks who know it's not about them, who don't mistreat people, who are willing to take responsibility for their own shortcomings, and then who can lead others to do the same. These are the leaders that we need. These were the kind of leaders that Jesus was trying to produce. He was successful. I mean, they went out, right? I would say he's still trying to produce these leaders. I think he's producing these leaders right here in this room. I think Jesus has a cool plan for us. Not only in our own lives, but in the life of us as a family, in our life out there in the community, certainly around the world. None of this is happening by accident. It's amazing to me. With Peter, he gets through the painful making amends part. Now he's feeling the weight being lifted as Jesus is now bringing him forward. And Jesus says, now feed my sheep. Take care of my people. Lead the church, right? Like a shepherd gently leads his sheep forward. Jesus is like, I'm going to leave soon. It's time for you to step in and fish for people with humility. Now, who was the first group of people that Jesus might have been talking about? It was the disciples that were right there with them. It was the first group of people right there. It was the disciples that were right there on the beach. Why were those guys fishing in the first place? Because they followed Peter. Remember? Peter's downcast. He's totally overwhelmed with guilt, thinks it's all over. How can he possibly face Jesus now? Says, yeah, whatever, I'm going fishing. They all said, yeah, we'll come too. Jesus says, do you see how these guys followed you? Whether you like it or not, you have influence, Peter, right? Please lead them in the right direction. Now that you've been set straight, please set the proper course. These are your first group right here. You let them off in the wrong direction. Nothing happened because of it. What are you going to do now? Peter, pay attention, right? Lead. Let me just say this. Each and every one of us in here is a leader. Every single one of us. Why do I say that? If you've decided to follow Jesus, you're a leader on planet Earth. You've decided to make a decision for your life. You've decided to follow a certain direction. You decided to have a certain amount of values in your life that say, this is who I'm going to be. Not always going to get it right, but this is who I'm going to be, which makes you a leader. There are those who are watching. So the question isn't whether we're all a leader. We're all a leader. The question is, are we a good one or not? That's the question. We're all a leader. The question is, are we a good leader or not a good leader? People are watching us. People might even have certain expectations on us because they know you're a Christian. And I say, oh my gosh, let's lead well. It doesn't mean we have to be in control. It means we have to love people in all humility, carry ourselves well, and make good decisions, take care of our own junk so they can see. I ask myself this question every day. Tim, are you a good leader or not? It's a good question to ask. I have time. Wasn't sure I was going to share this or not. I was kind of hoping I was going to run out of time. So, I'm a dad, obviously, and we just got back last night from California because our oldest daughter graduated college. Yay. And it was a huge win, right? But there was a moment when both of our daughters were in their teens, and I, up to that point, thought I was an awesome leader. I thought I was like the awesome dad. And in some ways, I was an awesome dad. In a lot of ways, I was. But I just didn't think I had any blips on the radar screen at all, right? And I was kind of the boss dad, right? The boss dad. This is it. This is who you are. This is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to act. This is what you're going to believe. Da, 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 da. And I thought that was all good, that I was just leading him forward in the... Anyway, there comes a spot as a teenager where, they kind of had their own thoughts. Like, oh, wait, what? They kind of have their own thoughts. They kind of have their own questions. They kind of want to do things their own way. That might not have been my way, that I was convinced it might not even been the right way, and maybe it wasn't. But being the boss dad really didn't cut it. I didn't see it. They were trying to tell me. Wendy sometimes would try and tell me, and I'm like, nope, I'm sticking to my guns on this. Which really wasn't relationally healthy. So there finally came a place, you can see that none of this is in my notes, I'm just living it in my head. There finally came a place where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is not right. It's not healthy for my relationship. It's not healthy for them. They're not seeing Jesus. How can I talk about this loving God who's, that you come and it gives grace and mercy and and then I'm just this bang, 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 bang. Like that. The audio didn't match the video, right? It didn't match. Sorry, I yelled and woke up baby. And I'm like, I have to take responsibility for this. So I did. I sat down with them, made my amends, talked it through, talked about what I was learning. They were saying, we love you. We're honored to be your kids. You're an amazing dad. But, you got some of this. You have to shift a little bit here because it's getting pretty rough. So you ever feel like you've blown it? So much so that you just need to make it right. You can, is my point. Yesterday and these past 3 days in California was amazing with our daughters. It was amazing. I still needed to lead. I still need to lead. I still have to be their dad. And it's okay to get knocked down a peg, and it's okay to say, you know what, I don't have it all together, and still lead. That's who we are. That's who Jesus is looking for a church we don't have to have it all together. We can get knocked down a peg. It's good that we get knocked down a peg, but we still take our place. We still take our place and we lead. Right? So, if you feel like you've blown it, maybe not to the degree that I did, but there's something going on right now and you're like, I got to go make it right with so-and-so, do it. Do it. Right? Here it is, Matthew chapter 5. So if you're presenting a sacrifice at the altar in the temple, church, and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you, leave your sacrifice there at the altar. Go and be reconciled to that person. Then come and offer your sacrifice to God. In other words, if you're at church and you're sitting here and you're going, oh, you got to be kidding me. Go take care of it. Go take care of it. Why? One, the pain makes it much less likely that you'll do it again. The pain's okay. Two, you will find peace for your soul, and you won't get it any other way. It's just how it works. And three, because God has a plan for your life. God has a plan for your life. To lead with humility and to positively impact the life of those around you, especially your friends and family. So let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you that you gave me the time to tell my story that I didn't want to tell. Because you're good. It's not about me. It's always about you. It's always about your standards. It's always about your ways. It's always about your love. And we appreciate you when you speak into our life and we become better for it. So I thank you for these moments as a family where we can just say, Jesus, work in my mind, work in my heart. If I have something to take care of, please give me the courage to go do it and fumble my way up to the door. I thank you for what you're doing in this church. I thank you that we're 6 months old. I thank you that we're 60 people when we started with 11. I just appreciate what you're doing. I think you're doing something amazing in us because I think you want to do something amazing through us. And we say, here we are. So do it, Lord. Have your way with us, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.